and October's such a weird month. Like October in my experiences, I spend more time on the ground than I do in a tree, like 10 times over, if not more, because like it's changing so much. I mean, every week, and that's why I don't rely on trail cameras a whole lot during October because, well, one, most of my cameras are SD card cameras, maybe a little bit different if it was cell, but sometimes it seems like it's a 2 to 3 day thing and then something shifts or the leaves are dropping off or this browse that they were feeding on it turned brown, and it's just like things are constantly changing. Then all of a sudden testosterone levels are increasing and now they're, focusing more on the does, and it's a crazy month to be able to do. And that's why I personally like to be on the fly a lot. And I know you do too, of like constantly trying to find, that hot sign and figure out. So like for you hunting your way in now that you're going after this deer, what is going to be kind of your approach, and like, what would you technically find the sign you need to be able to set up?
So I'm very intimate with this whole area because I've spent so much time in there. And so I have all these little areas built up in my head of, if I find sign here in this drainage and I stop and listen and I hear this white oak flat dropping acorns, well, I know the beds are 140 yards up this ridge around the point. And so like for me at this point, it's more of, I've done all this homework already, where as long as I can verify the one variable that I need, I'll just take a shot at it on the right condition day. And so I'm looking at now we're 5 days out. I'm looking at weather patterns. I'm trying to figure out basically my scouting routes in at this point. And I'll just start working my way, creeping into a system. And if I find what I need, I'll just basically sit down and take a shot at it. And if I don't find what I need, I'll just hop over the next one and then continue to do the same thing. And I'll get to a certain point in the day where I'll probably just go home. Like, unless I can throw an observation sit and see something, but a lot of these areas are thick. So yeah, for me, it's not like, I struggle a lot if I go into an area where I don't know the bedding or I don't know where the food sources are necessarily going to be at, because it's hard to be on the fly and do that and be effective on big deer. It's like, okay, I found feeding sign, but you set up on it and it's like, okay, it's a 2-year-old. Or I found feeding sign here and the bedding is a mile away and they're, working way down into this system. So for me, October, I would say the biggest thing I have going for me, a lot like yourself in these areas, is just like building that intimacy with the area, because then you can play that game and you're looking for one variable as opposed to a bunch of variables.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I struggle with the same thing. It's like last year in West Virginia, I went down in October for like 3 days to be able to hunt/scout. I never climbed in the tree once because I couldn't, I'm like trying to look for a specific type of deer, which is, I look at West Virginia as like, that's my trophy state. And like, this is, I want to shoot something really big. And it's like, it's really hard to go in on the fly and find something that, like, I found there's acorns dropping. I knew that this was going on, but it's like, okay, where are they bedding? This whole area is super thick. So my idea was just like, keep scouting. And if I bump them, all right, now I learned something, because I didn't have that previous knowledge. I didn't scout there in the spring. It was, brand new going into it. Now, this year I went down in the spring and it was like, I walked as much as I could to start getting more of a picture, but still, I don't feel confident as far as like knowing exactly where these deer bed at or doing anything. It takes a lot of time of building this and like having those personal experiences to be able to know that. It's tough, and that's where the value of knowing an area is, to be able to adapt on the fly like that. I mean, I was just talking to Nathan Killen about it when I was with him in person. We were just chatting. He was talking about how he doesn't do a whole lot of, summer scouting other than running cameras. He's like, I did my work before, in the spring, and it's like, I'll see what the conditions are as far as food sources and stuff. And that'll obviously change things, but I already have a plan for all of these different things that could potentially happen.
Yeah, and I think you can look at pretty much across the board. I don't know if there's many guys out there that are very successful just going in blind. And like, at least consistently year after year. It seems like the guys that are successful early to mid-October are guys that have done a ton of legwork and a ton of homework, and they just build up that intimacy. Like you in West Virginia, 3 to 5 years from now, you're going to be able to go into those areas, and then you're like, okay, well, that same food source I saw year one is hot. I bumped those deer. I know where they should be. So I just have to cut them off at this point. So just like building that intimacy up and that intel up over time is just going to lead to more success.
Yeah, and it's like West Virginia, one of the things that I'm learning, or well, this is like my latest theory at least, but I know that there's really, really big deer that can live there. So I'm hunting a chunk of private land that's a big chunk of private, and that we have at least, so it's like we have 150-inch minimum that we're not willing to shoot less than that. Unless it's an 8-point, it could be 140 inches, which is huge.
That is huge.
So I know that has the potential to grow these big deer, and I've found a couple, but like I'm like, there's a lot of land here, and I'm not finding them. What am I doing that's, off the wall that I can start thinking of? And now I'm like, maybe they're bedding way lower than I'm thinking. Like maybe they're right above, people always see, big deer from the roads, like down in the valleys and stuff. And I'm like, maybe these deer are just living down low on these side hills, and I'm just not, I hadn't picked up on it at that point. And I was talking to my buddy Josh about it that lives down there, and he was kind of coming up with the same type of conclusion. He's like, I just talking about that with Zach the other day. And I'm like, man, that's something that, and like I said, this is, every area is different. So it's like trying to put these pieces together, and, eventually you find something, and then it starts working for you. And then that's when the consistent, hopefully success, rolls after that of being able to do it. And what do you feel like with you, you're starting to really branch out and hunt a whole bunch of different states. I saw you've been scouting Indiana and Kentucky and all these places. What has that been like for you from a change?
So I'm learning how to do that still. And this year, one of the big wake-up calls I have now, looking back on it, is you build up tendencies as a hunter in whatever area you're in. And then you just like basically make assumptions. At least I do. I make assumptions that deer do deer things anywhere you go. But every place is different in some way, shape, or form. And I'm starting to recognize that. Kentucky, for example, they have the hub scrapes down low where they should be. Like everything looks identical to where I hunt in Ohio, but the deer just aren't dropping low that much. At least the big mature bucks. They're actually feeding up more often. And so I'm working through that. Illinois, when I went out there and scouted, Illinois was a big curveball because there's a lot of cliffs and there's a lot of just recreation in general. So areas that I thought would look good on a map, I went in, I wasted a ton of time in areas just trying to like dissect what's actually good or not. But Indiana was close. New York is actually quite a bit different in certain areas I hunt. So like I have the farm / mountain mix kind of in, like I grew up 45 minutes north of you basically. But if I go a little bit further east, I get back into just straight mountains and big woods. And those deer are totally different there too. And I've started, when I go up there, I focus more on that big wood setting now. I've noticed a lot of those deer are actually bedding lower, like what you're seeing in West Virginia. So it's really just trying to, like, as a hunter, break out of the tendencies that I have in my head and just stay open-minded. That's been my big thing through my stories and my social media this year and my podcast, is trying to just become as open-minded and as accepting of whatever deer are telling me as possible. Where in the past I would just be like, well, that doesn't make sense. They're not doing this. Like, it doesn't make sense that this giant 9-year-old deer is walking over top of the spine of this ridge, so it's not happening. But in reality, it's happening, and like he's exposed. And so, like, I'm just, as a hunter, I'm trying to do my best job as possible of just accepting what the deer are telling me, and then taking that and evolving and adapting, like, down that road, as opposed to just being, maybe a little bit cocky with what I think I know.